China is about to go to war with Japan after Japan said, quote, "If Taiwan is attacked, we will respond with our own defense force." And in response to these threats by Japan, China said, quote, "Japan must stop playing with fire, as those who play with fire will perish by it." In fact, a Chinese diplomat even said, quote, "The dirty head that sticks itself in must be cut off." And a lot of people interpreted that as China saying they want to kill the new Prime Minister of Japan. But you need to know why this conflict and these threats have just started between China and Japan. Not long ago, a new Prime Minister was elected in Japan, and it's safe to say that she is a hell of a lot more anti-China than the previous Prime Minister. And in response to this, and Japan increasing their threats against China, China has also summoned the Japanese ambassador to China. And at the same time, as I've already somewhat said, China and Japan traded a lot of threats between each other. Now, it is worth knowing that this new Prime Minister of Japan has kind of realised her mistake. Of course, it's new, she's a new Prime Minister, and she's realised that she's ruined the relations between Japan and China. And because of that, she said she would, quote, "be more careful about commenting on specific scenarios in the future." However, China has made it very clear that Japan needs to stay out of their business, or it's only going to end one way. But China has other things to worry about. It seems like they've just been attacked, and their famous 2,000-year-old temple has been burnt down. However, this comes just days after India threatened China, and it looks like China has been attacked. And China spoke on this. They said, quote, "Our preliminary investigations suggest that the fire was caused by a visitor's improper use of candles." So even China admits that a person caused this fire, possibly on purpose. But something you need to know, even if this was done on purpose and China was attacked, they actually didn't do a very good job of it. The main historic, important parts of the temple, which are 2,000 years old, actually didn't get damaged that much at all. The only things that were damaged were the modern things. Although China did still say that the damage to those is going to cost millions of dollars to repair and months to restore. Although luckily China did say, quote, "We organised firefighting efforts quickly and the flames have now been extinguished with no casualties reported." So whether this 2,000-year-old temple in China was set on fire on purpose or not, we don't know. But what we do know is that it caused a lot of damage. But when the final investigation comes back from China on this, I'm sure in a few weeks, we will know a lot more and we will know if China was actually attacked or not. But it's not just China being attacked. Thailand and Cambodia have just attacked each other, and the ceasefire between them has been thrown out of the window today. Cambodia said, quote, "Over the last few days, Thai forces have carried out numerous provocative actions with the objective of having a confrontation. And today, those actions worked, and Cambodian and Thai forces have opened fire at each other on the border." But you need to know, we don't know who started this attack. Both sides are accusing each other of starting it. What we do know is that 3 civilians were injured and 1 was sadly killed. In fact, Cambodia has evacuated over 250 people from the small village on the border where this fighting took place, as they fear that the fighting could take place again and the Thai side might have placed landmines in the village. But Thailand said, quote, "Cambodian soldiers initiated the shooting." However, Cambodia said the opposite. They said, quote, "Thai forces began the gunfight." So we don't know who started this attack, but what we do know is that back in October, a ceasefire deal was signed between Cambodia and Thailand, and the US President Trump took responsibility for that ceasefire deal. At the time, he said, quote, "We've done something that a lot of people said it couldn't be done." But today, it's been proven why a lot of people have said that, because the ceasefire deal hasn't held and it's just been thrown away, and it seems like they're about to go back to war now. But the US is getting involved in a lot of countries at the moment. For example, the US today has sent a letter to Israel, and you need to know what that letter said. In fact, this letter that was sent directly to the Israeli President Isaac Herzog said something so important that a lot of people are questioning who's actually in charge of Israel now. In the letter, the US President Trump said, quote, "As Israel moves past the terribly difficult times of the last 3 years, I hereby call on you to fully pardon Netanyahu, who has been a formidable and decisive wartime prime minister and is now leading Israel into this new time of peace." And if you don't know, the reason Trump has sent this letter calling on Israel to pardon Netanyahu is due to corruption cases against Netanyahu in Israel. In fact, Netanyahu is the first sitting Israeli Prime Minister to stand trial, and he's been charged with, quote, "fraud, breach of trust and accepting bribes." In fact, he has 3 separate cases of him accepting bribes and money from politicians, rich people and organisations, etc. But in this letter today, the US called on the Israeli president to pardon Netanyahu and drop these charges against him. And Netanyahu responded to Trump. He said, quote, "Thank you, President Trump, for your incredible support. As usual, you get right to the point and say it like it is." And to be fair, the Israeli president does have the power to grant pardons, and he can drop the charges against Netanyahu and let him go free. But Israel has other things they need to be focusing on as well, because Iran just hijacked an oil tanker carrying billions of dollars of oil. In fact, this oil tanker was traveling from the UAE, carrying UAE oil, and it was hijacked by Iran just 20 miles after leaving the UAE. And this is such a big deal that it could genuinely cause issues between Iran and the UAE, and you need to know why Iran has done this. But that reason why is not what you think. This actually comes in response to the US doing something similar to Iran just last month. A month ago, the US actually seized an Iranian oil tanker carrying Iranian oil, due to the West's and the US's new sanctions against Iran. And so, rather than directly seizing a US oil tanker, Iran has gone to one of the US's allies, and they've seized this UAE oil. And Iran actually used 3 small speedboats to hijack this oil tanker. Their special forces then boarded the ship and sailed it all the way into a port in Iran. However, it's worth knowing that this ship was actually heading from the UAE all the way to Singapore, so it's weird why Iran chose this ship and not one a little bit more related to the US. But as this happened only a few hours ago, we haven't got a comment yet by Iran or the UAE. So when they comment on it, and I'm sure they will, I'm sure we will get more details on that. But Iran has a lot to worry about at the moment. They're about to evacuate their capital city and make 10 million people leave. And you need to know why they're doing this. And it's actually because Iran has 0 drinking water left. If you don't know, this is actually the largest drought in the last 70 years. Iran has had literally no rain. Across the entire Middle East, to be fair, there's been very little rain. But Iran's water storages are now at just 5%, and the Iranian president said, quote, "If the drought persists for more than a month longer, we will have to evacuate Tehran." However, due to there being literally 0 rainfall at all, the first time in over 70 years, the people of Iran are blaming it on Israel. I'm being serious. The head of Iran's atmospheric water technologies even commented on it. The people of Iran are saying that because there's been 0 rainfall at all, then Israel must be using some advanced technologies to seize and steal the Iranian rain clouds. Seriously, sounds a bit crazy, but a lot of people are talking about it, and this Iranian head of that water technology said, quote, "Human knowledge is constantly advancing, and we cannot rule out every possibility." On to what we do know though, Iran is cutting off the water during the night to try and preserve water so that they can survive for a little bit longer. But if Iran doesn't get rain in the next month, they're going to have to evacuate Tehran and over 10 million people. God knows how they're going to do that, but they've got to do that or they're going to die. But America just tried bombing a submarine, and you need to know what just happened. Today, whilst they were sailing close to Russia, a German and Swedish submarine joined forces with the US. And what's important is what these countries did whilst they joined forces with NATO today. And what they did was actually practice attacking each other, but the way they did that was really quite interesting. The first thing that NATO did was get this German and Swedish submarine to try and hide in the really shallow Baltic Sea. And then French and Dutch helicopters and warships joined with a US warship and a US intelligence plane. And they had to try and find these German and Swedish submarines that were hiding from them. Basically, the submarines were playing hide and seek. They had to use their new stealth technology to try and hide from NATO. Now, the Baltic Sea is actually just 50 meters deep on average, which is way shallower than an ocean which is thousands of meters deep. So it's a lot harder for submarines to hide, and it's more dangerous. They could bump into things on the sea floor. But despite all things saying that these submarines should be detected very easily, NATO said they did a fantastic job. In fact, the French, Dutch and US team said that they really struggled to find these German and Swedish submarines, and the stealth technology is really good. So a really interesting NATO military exercise, and it shows that NATO submarines are actually pretty advanced at the moment. But you might have realised this is my daily news recap, where I cover the most important news from the last 24 hours. We do these videos every day, and most people would do them maybe once a week. But yesterday, Greece bought new fighter jets and they're preparing for a war with Turkey. So click here to watch that video. You'll definitely learn something and it's really important. And click here to subscribe so that you can see tomorrow's daily recap as well. Also, these videos are totally demonetized because we talk about stuff that you just aren't allowed to talk about. So if you want to help fund these videos and make it so that I can keep doing them, go to alexbarnicoat.com or the top link in the description. For $3 a month, you can help support the channel and help pay for these videos. It really does mean a lot. I'll answer all of your messages when you do join. So thank you guys, have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.